But here's something that I love to share this story. My dad used to talk about his service, once in a while, and I learned a lot about it. And I studied history, so I studied where he was and what he did. He was in some epic battles in World War II. But later on in life, it was, I think it was 1995. My dad had passed in 1983, and I was recording a show about Iwo Jima. And when I went downstairs and looked at it, because we had a barbecue that day, believe it or not, a 75-year-old man told a story about my father, showed a picture of him, and named him by name. And I was like, oh, my God, this is pretty amazing. So I ended up getting in touch with the producer of the show, who put me in touch with 6 guys who were still alive at the time, who were on Iwo Jima with my dad.
Wow.
Now, if you know about the history, most of the guys who were on Iwo Jima, it was their first combat. Now, my dad had been in 4 years of combat previous to that, so he was one of the grizzled veterans. And these guys told me the most remarkable stories about my father. And, that's something that I really internalized, because they talked about the fact that he really kept them alive through his leadership.
So was he in a pretty prominent leadership position at the point that they went into Iwo Jima then? Because you said he was
he was only a corporal.
Okay.
But by the end of the first day, he was acting as a first lieutenant because everybody got killed. And actually, this guy, Maurice Weisenberg, told me an amazing story. He was on my dad's machine gun, and there were actually 6 guys on each one of those machine guns. And he jumps over over the side and loses all his equipment as he's landing on Iwo Jima. And the way he put it, he snooped and pooped, and it took him about 5 hours to traverse the 600 yards right at the base of Mount Suribachi. And he had no equipment, and he found a machine gun, and he dragged it with him. And when he got to the other side of the island, there was a little perimeter that was set up, and my dad was in charge. And he said, "Jim, look, I got a machine gun." And my dad's face lit up. And he said, and then his face dropped. And he said, "Jim, what's wrong?" He says, "Well, where's the tripod?" He says, "Well, I couldn't drag the tripod and the gun." He says, "But the gun is no use without the tripod." So he said, "Well, what do you want me to do?" He says, "Well, you have to go back and get the tripod." So the guy crawled another 200, 300 yards back across the island, and he grabbed the tripod.
Yeah.
And then he said to himself, "Well, if I bring the tripod, then he's going to say, 'Where's the ammunition?'" So he says, "I told these 2 Marines to follow me and grab those ammunition boxes, and they must have thought that I was an officer because they did it." I said, and what did my dad do with the machine gun? He said he set it up and he wouldn't let anybody touch it. I said, "Well, what did he do?" He said he would fire it once in a while. Fire, move, fire, move, fire, move. And that's how they stayed alive. But pretty crazy story. Weissy, go get the tripod.
Jeez.